Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Real Talk with a Unicorn. My name is Tatiana. I'm a recruiter in supply chain and logistics, and here we discuss leadership, professional, and personal growth. And I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Denis Campeau. Denis is a certified leadership and emotional intelligence coach with over 10,000 hours of coaching. And certainly, Denis has his expertise in corporate world. He spent 25 years in leadership positions in various industries. And the last role that Denis had was Chief Information Officer. Denis, thank you so much for your time and welcome to my show today.
All right, welcome. Thank you.
Yes, it's a great pleasure. As I mentioned in my introduction, your last role was Chief Information Officer. It was in 2011. And after that, I see that you switched your career completely. You went into coaching, specifically emotional intelligence and leadership coaching. Can you tell me about this transition? Why did you make that move?
That's an interesting story. So the way I like to call it is it was a consequence of climbing a long mountain. So this first mountain was a software engineer who was climbing the mountain, going from software engineer to project manager, business analyst, product manager to CIO. And when I got to CIO at the top of the mountain, I think I just got tired. For the professionals who've never experienced that, I probably had some level of professional burnout, really. That's what happened. And once I experienced that, it caused me to take a break. And in that break, I took about 6 weeks to 8 weeks off and tried to figure out, like, what do I want to do next? And what do I really enjoy out of my work that doesn't drain me, but actually gives me energy? So I got into the world of change management. But I said, before I ask other people to learn about change management, I'm going to do it on myself first. So I went through a career change effectively, and I became an executive coach. So in that first round of learning as an executive coach, I got to find a few great mentors. I had 2 or 3 great mentors that really helped me out to launch that career change. And I think it was really important because mentors help you see the future from a perspective that you can't see yourself, because we can't see ourselves. We were just good at seeing what we're seeing. So the mentors really helped me out. One was an entrepreneur, another one was a master coach, another one was a power networker, and bringing them together helped me to see the world from a different point of view. It also gave me a time to step back because my wife was starting her career, which I wanted her to do because I had done mine now, and we had raised our children. So it gave me a chance to be a bit of Mr. Mom when the kids were leaving the house, and also to get me to do some executive coaching and network with tons of people. Mm-hmm. So it took me about 3 or 4 years of doing executive coaching with over 500 individuals, and that's where my 10,000 hours of practice really happened. And I got to see people from top leaders to male, female professionals. I had 75% of my clientele professional females, actually trying to break through the glass. Professional males was more executives and business owners. And wow, like, talk about learning. Like when you're coaching other individuals, you learn through their experience because you get to observe them, mm-hmm. and you get to ask them powerful questions. And coaching is really about that, asking powerful questions. So then, as I was learning through that, I got into emotional intelligence training because I found that too many times our projects, as an IT executive, right, as a CIO, mm-hmm. our projects, where we would struggle the most is at the relationship level. Technology, you can kind of figure out. You got to get the right expert. Process, you can figure out. You got to get the right analysis of operations. But when you get to that people organizational effect, you can really see the impact and how challenging it can be for some people to learn about how to change when your business is asking you to change. So emotional intelligence got me into the world of understanding how to listen to my emotions, what are my belief systems, managing them, learning to listen to other people's needs. And anyway, so I did that for a few years, got into coaching around, training around emotional intelligence, got into training around change management. And in the past few years, I've really been focusing on change management. That's really been my bread and butter now. So why did I do a transition? I had climbed my first mountain. I had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in my life. I became a CIO, but then I realized that I wanted to spend the next 10, 15 years of my life doing things that I'm passionate about, doing things that bring me positive energy, where my attitude is the best, because that's where I'm getting I feel fulfilled, right? It's more meaningful to me to work on the people side than it was on the pure technology side.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, and what I'm hearing when you told me that you decided to take a break, reflect, and take some time to think about what it is that you wanted to do, um, the story that you described, of course, it's been a few years ago, so you just take the highlights of it. But I'm sure there were days when you struggled with your choice. Was it easy for you to make that change? Was it easy for you to find those 500 people, mentors? I know from the distance right now, you look at it as experience that you're very grateful for. It shaped you as a character. But when you are going through this transformation, through this transition, can you tell me more about those moments of doubt? Maybe your expectations were higher and real life was different from what you wanted it to be initially. Can you tell me about how you coped with those days, with those periods of time?
Oh, that's a great question. So change management is about helping people struggle. So when I went through the career change, I was doing change management, I understood it. But when you actually do it for yourself and on yourself, it's way more challenging. So things that I've struggled with. One was salary is very different. So if you're going from a CIO, you're making 6 figures solid, and then you launch your own business, well, most people need to know you have to put money into your business to get it going. So the mentors helped me out to build my networks, helped me to find, potential clients. But the truth of the matter is, if you're a professional coach today, the average income is about $40,000. That's the reality of starting off. If you're lucky, those are the ones that are actually relatively successful. So you took a really big, salary hit. That was the first thing. Second thing is, I was a CIO. I wasn't like a head of sales. So I had to learn about sales. I had to learn about entrepreneurship. Even though I had done my executive MBA, it's really nice to learn about all these things in school, but you have to do it. And what I learned through the entrepreneurship piece was how important the emotional intelligence piece became, because it was about connecting with people. And when you're gonna be coaching someone, they have to really trust you, because you're accompanying them through their own struggle. So you yourself have to get good at struggling. So what I did on purpose was, whenever I would work with a client, and my clients often didn't know I was doing this, if me as a coach, I would dare to propose maybe a first step or a question that they should answer for themselves, I would always practice on myself first. So I was my own guinea pig. I would answer their own questions. I would ask all of my clients. If my clients took an initiative to try something, I would often try it in the background to see how it feels, just to remind myself how challenging it is to do some of those things. Now, obviously, I couldn't do everything because their life is different than mine, but quite often I would do them. So for example, some people just need to do physical improvements on their lives. So I would do it for myself. I learned my physical exercise, redo all my habits, challenge all my habits, improve my health. Sometimes it was a mental challenge. Sometimes they had to relearn something or read new books, so I would do them all as well. Sometimes it was emotional. Sometimes they had to ask questions or talk to people in ways that they weren't used to talking. They had to listen, and we'll get to that a bit later. So that was really challenging. So I had to learn to improve my own relationships with my wife and my kids and my friends and my clients. And sometimes it was a spiritual journey. Some people just are lost. They have no idea what the next path will be. So in those cases, sometimes I would act a bit more as a mentor, especially if it was a path that I had taken before. Some people would call me like a Sherpa, like I would help them climb their mountain and accompany them through it. And even today, some of my clients will come back and they'll send me these notes or these emails and say, wow, Denny, look where I'm at now, because they just want somebody to hear them and see them in their accomplishments. We all wish we have a mom and a dad that's really there to say, we're proud of you and we're watching you. But reality is, we don't all have that relationship with our parents. And some parents can't even appreciate where we're at in our career because they don't know they don't know our professional field or our industry. So it's hard for them to comprehend just what we go through when we struggle. So definitely there's many days where I would say, oh my God, what have I done to myself? Like I went from a CIO, and now I'm struggling, having trouble making ends meet, paying bills. It was like horrible at first, but man, did I ever learn. Like I learned more through the first 6 months of that experience than I learned through 2 years of an executive MBA, to be quite frank, because I was in a different world. My MBA served me really well when I was in the corporate world. Don't get me wrong. where I was struggling was when you're a true entrepreneur and you have to make sales. The MBA can train you on tons of stuff, but you got to connect with people. And building trust is what I had to learn how to do really fast. And there's a reason why you and I are talking together today, because I can do that. And that's what happened, right? So you trusted me enough to have this conversation. And I trust you enough that I know that by sharing my real life story and being authentic, it's going to help other people for real.
Yes.
So yeah, so there's some days I was terrified. Some days I'd be crying my soul, asking myself, what am I doing here? Some days I'd be super happy. So an entrepreneur's ride is like a roller coaster. You kind of go in these ups and downs. Some days I would make lots of sales. Some days I would make nothing. Some weeks I would do nothing. And then all of a sudden some bluebird would appear, right? Sometimes I would have conferences and I would invite hundreds of people only to have one person show up. And then sometimes I would invite 2 or 3 people and I would have 30, 40, 50 people show up. I had clients where we broke some excellent barriers with them into the 1,500 conferences and plus. So it was really amazing to see how not only I was riding the waves, but how I was riding them along with some of my clients too. So yeah, it was struggling. There's no doubt about it, but it's through the struggle that you learn. That's how you grow. There's no way around it.
What you just described, I'm hearing 2 very important things from your story. The first one is empathy, because when you experience the same struggle as your client is going through, and that's what I find myself being more empathetic right now than I was 15 years ago, simply because I had to go through certain struggles that help me emphasize with people who are dealing with this right now. So when you took this step and you made yourself your own guinea pig to go through the same things that you advise your clients do, that was empathy that you were developing. And the other thing is that managing expectations is crucial, because depending on what we expect, we set the palette of emotions that we experience. Expect nothing and be grateful for everything. This is something that I've learned through my entrepreneurial journey. And I can completely relate to that when you invite 100 people and one shows up. And you do your best because you know this one life matters. This person is here for a reason. So Denis, at that time when you were developing that empathy, did you know that those things that you were going through is called emotional intelligence? Like, how did you come to the terminology of emotional intelligence, this desire to study it, and how do you define emotional intelligence for yourself?
I think it's funny. I had actually coached for a few years before I really got deep into emotional intelligence, until I actually decided that I was going to, even when I was actually not making lots of money, I decided I was going to take some of my life savings and invest in myself and get recertified in emotional intelligence in California. And so I worked with an organization. I went down there. It was amazing. Some of the best training I'd seen in my life. And I think that was a turning point. So it wasn't just the emotional intelligence training that triggered me. It was the decision that I was going to reinvest another $10,000 in my own training. Because remember, at that point, I was a father, 4 children. They're all preparing to go to university. My wife is starting her career. It's quite stressful. So to decide to take some of your life savings and to actually reinvest it in yourself while everybody else is still struggling, it was a big leap of faith. And I'm glad I did it. So when I actually got into emotional intelligence, I learned about empathy. And I also learned what emotional intelligence was, like the mechanics of it. Because remember, my background is an engineer. I didn't come from social services, psychology courses. I didn't come from that world. So I came from a really brute force logical, I had to explain it to myself in my head, step by step. So I learned emotional intelligence literally step by step as a function, almost like a computer function, if you like. And once I actually practiced it enough, I realized how it worked. And then I was able to separate the world of emotions, which is tied to a beliefs and attachments and expectations, to the world of feelings. And when I separated the two, wow, did the world open up all of a sudden. I realized they're not the same thing at all, right? My emotions are a lot about what's happening in my head and how I'm thinking and what I believe in. All the things that my parents and my ancestors and my businesses, corporations, the government, everybody, what they tell me, what I should be believing, that generates emotions. Feelings are not just in my head, feelings are across my entire body. So when I realized that my body was like a tuning fork, and I could actually listen to what was going on in the room through feelings and letting those feelings move up to my head where I would trigger emotions, all of a sudden the world looked completely different. And I realized I had scheduled to me that HR was trying to explain to me that I didn't understand. Every HR manager I've ever worked with always said, you're like a natural HR manager, but you don't understand that. I said, I don't, because I never was trained for this. I just do it naturally. So that was interesting. So empathy comes natural. And I think the more I did coaching, the more I walked under the more I accompanied other people through their lives, the more I gained awareness of how many people struggle. And in fact, everybody struggles. I've never met a single human being who isn't struggling. Even the people you think are at top of the universe, they struggle the most often. The people that create this illusion that everything is perfect are often the ones that struggle the most deeply inside of them, because they're looking for something, or they'll be sabotaging their lives and they can't even see it yet. So I would be able to catch some of these by accident. So for example, if you look at LinkedIn, today we all network through LinkedIn. A lot of us are networking through LinkedIn. We connect through our connections we already had, but we have to work with the platform we have. Well, that's how we connected, right? And how did we connect? Well, we connected because I took a chance. I went out to the world. I looked at all the best change management professionals I could find. And then I found somebody who turned out to do good coaching. And he knew change management and knew coaching. I said, hey, I need a new mentor. Let's go get somebody else. And then we took a risk, and then I met you. But this wouldn't have happened if I didn't take a risk. But the quality of that relationship was important. And emotional intelligence and having empathy and having somebody that had empathy for me, where I am today, is very powerful. And that's what led us to connect. That's why we're having this video.
Yes, and Denis, when we talked on the phone initially, we touched on networking as well, and you mentioned that when you network, and even when you meet people for business or for other purposes, the essential thing to identify is what this person needs, what is this person craving. Often we don't have much time, especially recruiters who work for big companies. Their time is limited. They have 5 minutes per person or 10 minutes per person. They may come across as someone who is not listening properly, who is not willing to continue the conversation, but they do have pressure because they have someone who expects them to conduct a certain number of conversations. How to identify this need and make the most of this short conversation when you're networking with someone? What should we look for? Is it possible to describe, or is it even possible to identify within a few minutes?
It's interesting. Once you've actually coached a lot of people, you can connect with them in about 30 seconds. Because what you're connecting with is the need, but you're looking actually at their tone of voice. It's the nervousness in the call. So you're trying to get beyond the nervousness. If you talk to somebody and they start cracking their voice on the phone and they start getting nervous, you're not talking to the person. You're just talking to an outfit that they're wearing. This what's called like a veneer. It's almost like a ghost suit that they're wearing. But if you can make them feel comfortable through a dialogue, by listening, by having a bit of empathy, even a tiny little bit for 30 seconds, it'll remove a lot of that outfit, and then they can just be authentic and be themselves. And I find that now that I've actually, in the last 6 weeks, I've tried to connect with 300 recruiters. Mm-hmm. I've never done this before. This was really fascinating. As a coach, it was really fascinating because I get to see how recruiters behave, including yourself. And so 300 recruiters, and then I connected to about 100 of them that accepted to speak with me. Mm-hmm. And then out of them, I met with at least 3, almost 4 per day for the last month. And what I discovered was every one of them has a different approach, but there's a pattern that's very consistent. The great recruiters are the ones that just take a moment and say, hi, Denny, how are you? They just ask, like, how are you? And then we just start with, just getting to know each other for like 30 seconds, just a little chit chat. How was your day? How do you find these Zoom sessions? You enjoying the pandemic like everybody else? Like we just relax, Mm-hmm. And then so once we do that, then they say, Denny, I have some questions for you. Would you mind answering some questions? Because you've been talking to a lot of recruiters. I'll bet you answered all these questions before. And I'll say yes. And then I'll answer the questions, almost like a drill. Okay, here's my resume, here's my rate, here's what I can do, here's what I can offer, here's my references, blah, 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 blah. It's almost like the 12 questions. And then we get that out of the way. Then they go, okay, so I've got all the data. I know who you are. Now, Denny, tell me what you need. Tell me your dream job. Like, tell me what's your passion. Like, tell me that thing that you wish you could be doing for the next 5 years, and what kind of client do you want?
Mhm.
Oh, when I hear that, Tatiana, my heart almost explodes. That's how happy I am. Because now I know that they actually want to know about me. Like me, the person that they're going to take from my little world and put me into some other world where they know people, they know the connections, they have the relationships, because that is the fear. The fear for me is not to do the work. The fear to me is not even to do the transition. The concern is, what type of people will I be working with? What kind of environment will I be, put into, and for how long I'll have to struggle through that environment to ramp up. So the more the recruiter makes me feel like they know this population of people, the more I feel like they're going to bring the right fit, the right person in, which could be me, right? Because fit is about knowing people, understanding their needs. So if they can understand my need, my spiritual path, my career path, the things I want to practice, which is change management in my case, right? Change management, emotional intelligence training, coaching, all that cool stuff I love to do. And they say, wow, I have a client that really needs that. And then we can talk about the context. We can talk about the context of the project. What are they really struggling for? What's the business driver? Because in the end, they got to make money, right? They got to survive. So what is the true business need? And do they understand that if they bring somebody like me in their environment, what that implies, right? I'm a former executive who does change management. So I will talk the truth. I will talk directly as much as they can handle authentic conversations, but not every organization can handle that. Not every organization is willing to listen to a management consultant coming from outside and looking in. Not every manager is willing to learn about coaching styles. Not every employee is willing to go through the struggle of change and understand what their role is. So recruiters, the most powerful ones, are the ones that send me an email in advance saying, Denny, I have a bunch of questions. I want you to answer it and send me your resume. And I will read that before we have our call. Because then I just want to get to know who you are, and let's talk about the project that I think would be the most exciting for you. And what that does is it creates a story in their mind. See, at the end of our lives, all we are is a story. That's all I am. I'll be a story to my children. I'll be a story to my clients. I'll be a story to a bunch of people. Like my mentors, I've lost a few already this year, because of illness or cancer. And all really what they are to me is a story and a little voice in behind my head when I need them. That's really what we become in the end, right? So if I can become a great change manager and help an organization because a recruiter found the right fit and put me in the right place, and wow, we're doing everybody a service, because I want to have a great story in the end. I'm not going to be here forever, but I have so many stories to share. I have so many experiences I want to share, and that'll help the client beyond all the methodologies and techniques and practices, right?
And Dennis, you just mentioned that not every client is ready to handle an honest conversation, not every company. I noticed that approaching companies and with leadership training services, sometimes you have to educate them on why they need this service. What type of organizations are willing to invest money, and what type of organizations are still resistant? And when you, maybe it's like two questions combined in one, and when you deal with those executive leaders, of course they can connect with you better because you've been in their shoes, you've been an executive yourself. What do they struggle the most? Because in your previous message you mentioned that they don't seem like struggling with anything because they are executives. They made their dream come true. They are leading a team. They tell others what to do, like, those perceptions of executives, but apparently they struggle with things. So what are those things, and why companies are so resistant to hiring, maybe not, maybe I'm mistaken, to hiring coaches and emotional intelligence leaders, change management coaches?
Okay, there's a lot of questions in what you just
I know.
said. So let me unwind, let me practice some active listening here. So one question is, where is there a need for change management? Let's put it that way. If I can paraphrase the question. And then we'll talk about what do the leaders need that they don't know they need. How about that? So what I'm seeing for change management is there is a lot of tentatives, a lot of attempts to create what's called transformation offices, business transformation offices. And inside the business transformation office, you find the Enterprise Program Management Office, which has the list of all the initiatives they want to do in the company. You have change management professionals around communication, training, coaching, leadership development skills, development. And then you also have like this process optimization teams where they're really into lean out the operations. That is already successful. They just want to get more, squeeze more out of it, right? And then another different things you can see in the transformation office. So what I'm seeing is the corporate world, let's call it medium to large scale companies, are now integrating change managers as a full-time employee in their companies. That is pretty much consistent. And the ones that have attempted to bring in full-time change managers, or part-time or full-time, whether it be full-time or contract even, but more and more full-time I'm seeing, are embedding them in the business. They're finding that they need people that have more senior and have more experience working at all the different ranks in the company, people like me, right? Because you're dealing with all of them. And not just every rank, but every function in the corporation, which is what I have as well. That's why I'm a bit of a unicorn, because I've gone wide and I've gone high and deep. That's why I'm unusual. Now, organizations like medium size and banks have projects of a size of at least $500,000 to $1 million plus, right? So those that have organized or projects that need project managers that have a certain level of complexity, so they're impacting multiple functions, multiple departments, multiple clients. As soon as you have multiples in a project and you have a budget of at least $500,000, then you're looking at change management. It's got to be more serious, because less than $500,000, you can kind of get away with it. What we're seeing is a lot of organizations are trying to make their project managers become change managers. So they'll send them on training, like some ProSci training or whatever, hoping that they're going to naturally become change managers. Well, reality is the skill to do project management is a different skill than change management. And that's a different skill than being a business analyst or being an executive leader. These are different skill sets. And then you have all the different functions that you have to interface with. So organizations that I'm seeing are hiring change managers full-time are things like banks, insurance companies. A lot of that's happening right now. Larger corporations that have had to transform as a consequence of the pandemic. And now I'm seeing more of those calls. And I think, especially in 2021, you're going to see a lot of those companies say, wow, we're really behind the 8 ball. Like, we knew we had to transform, but we didn't understand the impact that it was going to have on our employees, on their families, on our clients, on how we run operations. So the change management that is complex requires change management professionals. And let me explain it from the angle of a coach now. So we know that executive coaching, for every dollar you spend, you get 300% back. I have tons of clients that will tell you they got a lot more than 300% back. Got some people actually saved their own lives as a consequence of really being coached at the right moment, because they were going to really veer in the wrong direction. We're not talking therapy. We're just talking about like serious career changes that would have really been hard to reverse. So 300% return on investment just for executive coaching, properly done with the right match. Now, I'm going to say that, I'm putting that parentheses, because if you're coached by somebody who doesn't understand your field, it can be treacherous. They can misguide you if they become your mentor, if they get out of the coaching realm. Now, change management adds another 300%. That's the training piece. That's the communications piece. So when an organization starts to invest $1 into change management with somebody who understands change management, understands training, understands, coaching, you add all that in, emotional intelligence on top of all that, all of a sudden your project goes from a chance of succeeding from 20 to 30% up to 60, 70% plus. And there's lots of statistics to prove that. So it's an investment. So corporations, banks right now are going mad trying to hire. Cities, large cities, where City of Toronto has to transform. Many big cities are going through involving change managers now as a result of this. So people have caught wind. They finally figured it out. Now the government's different. The federal government has attempted multiple times, and still is, to build transformation offices. And change management has been provided as training all over the place. So now there's awareness that change management should occur, but there's a lot of project managers who they don't want to do it because they don't see it as their role. So project managers are almost like, some are doing it in a resistance position. Some of them are doing it very willingly because it's just who they are by nature, people like me. But it's not everybody that's a project manager and a change manager at the same time. And also the PMP training that most of them has received isn't necessarily a right match with change management. PMP provides some change management. ITIL in the IT world will provide some sense of change management, but it's more about release management. You send out a new project, you make some incremental changes. But when we talk about organizational change management, it's way broader. You require understanding of technology, of process, of people, how the structure works, how people will react to it, if you're working with unions or not. So the world of the unions are hiring a lot of consultants, I find, for change management. The world that are non-unionized are actually hiring change managers as full-time staff inside. The other thing where I'm seeing is the length of time of the contracts and the stay of change managers is becoming longer. And that's because organizations are realizing that when you hire a change manager, it takes many months to build those relationships. Think about it. As a change manager, I need to build relationships across all the different functions, across the different levels, with key executives, with key influencers within the organization, with the training department, with the communication department, with external suppliers. Like, you start seeing a sense of the complexity of what the change manager has to grapple with. And also, different organizations have different methodologies of how they do change management. So there's much more, how can I put it? There's many different flavors of change management out there now, and there's different levels of maturity in the practice of change management. Some organizations are very new at it, so their frontline staff are excited about it. Their managers want to do the coaching. The directors are like, yeah, we just got to do this. But sometimes the leaders don't have enough time to realize their role as a sponsor of the change. And that can be a lot more than they could ever even imagine. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, they kind of get it because they're more involved in the day-to-day of what's happening in the operations. But when you're in a larger organization, above 250, 250 people plus, you get more detached from the reality of what's happening on the ground. And the change manager starts closing that gap and helps guide individuals through it. One thing we learned, so back to leaderships, like where are the blind spots of leaders? In the world of emotional intelligence, for example, we know, and this is proven in meta databases across North America and the world now, that emotional intelligence is way higher with frontline managers than it is with executives. So why is that? One is there's a generational gap. Basic psychology and emotional intelligence was more provided to those now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They're more aware of it than those that were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it's nothing against them. They just never learned it in school. It wasn't part of the training. And also, even in the leadership development training, emotional intelligence was, even like, I did my executive MBA almost 15 years ago now. And even then, change management wasn't what it is now, and emotional intelligence wasn't what it is now. It's way better understood as a mechanism. And in fact, you can evaluate it. So the exciting part is for top executives, they can not just learn it, they can practice, and their score in emotional intelligence can rise. Discovered working with executives, the part that, man, do they have a hard time with is listening. They're really good at listening to clients because they're good at listening to the market, right? Oh, I can listen to the market. I can hear the pain. The more pain they have, the more money I can make. Like, there's a bit of that side on the profit, the world of profit. If it's a world of non-for-profits, it's the same stuff. There's people with pain. We need to raise some money for that charity, whatever it is we're doing, product or service. But if you take that ear that is aimed to the market and you turn it to the ear inside the organization, then maybe they don't have that same drive to listen. And in fact, what you're listening for is different internally than it is externally. And I think there's a big gap there. Give an example. Let's say you're, you want to listen to your client. So what do you say? Well, what do you need for, have you tried our product before? No. Here, try some samples of our product. How did you like it? Well, I really liked it, or I didn't. Well, what did you like about it? I like this. Oh, your competitors are doing that. Oh, what are my competitors doing? So the conversation sounds a bit like that, right? But internally, if you're asking your staff, what do they need? there's like two parts to it. Well, there's many parts, but at least two parts. One is, what does your staff need to do their day-to-day job, to get stuff out of their way so they can make it easier? And then, what does a staff need for their own career and their own life that the business could do to adapt to them? And too many businesses haven't quite realized that the next generation that's coming in, like the people that are in their 20s, because I have 4 children in their 20s, and I can tell you that the things they tell me is very different than what I would have said or what my parents would have told me. My parents would have told me things like, well, you have a job, so just be loyal to your employer and you should be happy you've got a job. My generation, it was more about, well, I have a career path and here's where I'm going and I'm going to do this and hopefully you'll accommodate. If not, I'll go somewhere else. The next generation, then it's about lifestyle. They finally get it. They finally get that they've seen us burn out, the loyalists that were working too hard for their boss and then got kicked out, sent to the curb, you know? It sounds mean, but it feels like that sometimes. And then my generation, we're like at our peak of our career, and we know the reality that, you know, you can only be so loyal for so long. And sometimes companies change, they restructure, you got to kind of adapt to it. But their generation, they're more used to these smaller gigs, the smaller contracts, the smaller transactions, and they're more sensitive to inequality, diversity, inclusion, way more than we ever were. If you look at what happened in the United States with all the protests about what was going on for a while, people in their 20s were passionate about that, like way more than we would have ever seen. My children, they worked with people from around the world more than I ever did as a child, because the world has opened up, the internet's opened up everything for them. So they don't see color, they don't see race, they don't see sex, they just see people being equally treated or not. That's what they're seeing. So there's like a form of justice that's built into them. So their tolerance is different. In the world of emotional intelligence, we know for a fact that 90% of the reasons why people stay or leave in a corporation, and this is important for HR professionals to know, we stay or leave based on the quality of our relationship with our direct supervisor, not with the leader, with the supervisor. So I could tolerate not liking the leader of the organization as long as my relationship with my direct supervisor is good quality and intact. What that means is that my supervisor, and this has been surveyed to death in the United States now, the number one skill that employees recognize for managers, direct supervisors, is coaching. But if you dig into coaching, what you will find is what's called a dialogue. Is managers that are able to have a dialogue with their employees. Now, in the world of therapy, they call it active listening. But dialogues is more than just active listening. It's a very specific way of speaking with someone and interacting with them in a very specific sequence, depending on the situation. Then, if you dig into dialogues, you'll find another skill called pure listening. Listening is my sweet spot. Now, Tatiana, I told you maybe in this video, I give you an example of what listening feels and looks like. So if you want to try it, we can try it. But really the key for listening is this. There's 5 or 6, up to 7 steps to prepare yourself to listen to someone as a manager. And then there's 5, 6, 7 steps to listen to a different degree and a different depth, depending on what's happening with your employee. And very few managers even do level 0. You and I, on our phone call, the other day when I met you the first time, if you can permit me to say this, we were doing what I would call level 1 listening. And today, you've been doing that in this call. You're actually giving me what's called level 1 listening. But can you imagine we can get to level 7? And most people have never experienced even level 1. 99% of the professionals I've worked with, if I ask them what listening is, they cannot tell me what it is, but they know it's important. Everybody will tell you with a big banner behind an airplane how important listening is, but very few people actually have a clue of what it is or have ever experienced it for real. So let me do an exercise with you. You want to try it?
I'm willing to do that, Denis. It's level 1, level 7. Is it possible to kind of excel to that even?
Well, you can't. Most people can get to level 3. So what I'm going to do with you right now is I'm going to show you what level 3 looks and feels like. And then you can just imagine going further. And the reason we can go to level 3 today is because we're on a Zoom session. I can only go so far in reading your body language, right? But in a Zoom session, because of the way your camera is set up right now, I can see about, at least your upper body. And at least I can see your head moving. So that gives me a sense of a little bit of what's going on. In reality, I need to see your feet if I really want to get an answer, because your feet is the part of your body you have no control over, very little control. But the rest of your body you can control. There's about 43 muscles in your face that you can control when you're speaking. So when I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to practice a technique, right? So level 1 is I'm going to listen with my head. Level 2, level 1 is more with my ears. I'm going to listen, prove that I got something that came into my head. Level 2, I'm going to listen with my brain. And then level 3, I'm going to listen with my heart. Okay, you want to try this?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to keep your answers relatively short, just to make the exercise a little bit faster. But here's a question. My first question is, now that you've been interacting with me for at least 2 hours, first hour when we spent together and this session today, how do you feel about our relationship now?
I trust you. I trust your expertise. And I also feel that I can learn something from you because I feel incompetent sometimes. I feel that there's room for improvement, and I'm not happy about that part because I thought I was a good listener, for example.
Okay, good. So what I just did with my hand is I signaled to you that I heard enough, and I need to make sure that what I just heard is correct. So what I heard you say is, 1 is you trust me. 2 is that you trust my experience. And you're under the impression that you're going to be learning quite a bit from me today. And that you know that you have more development to do on that front.
Yes, correct.
Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes.
Okay, is that a good summary of what you're trying to say to me?
Yes, and one more thing that maybe it's more emotional. I feel vulnerable right now because we are recording this conversation, and showing up as vulnerable, it's uncomfortable. So.
Correct. Okay. So what I heard you say is you trust me, you trust my experience, you know you're going to be learning, you want to learn, and you know you have more to learn. And also that being vulnerable, especially in a live video like this, it's going to be shared with probably 1,000 people, is quite uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
Very uncomfortable. Even for me, it's a bit stressful, right? Okay. So that makes sense. Let me say this, that everything you said makes a lot of sense in my head. Now that I heard you, it makes sense. It makes sense that you trust me because I have a certain profile. I probably make you feel a certain way. And somebody that referred me to you, you probably trust that person too. So there's a transfer of trust that happened. You had a chance to read my resume. You saw it on LinkedIn. You probably saw a bunch of people giving me feedback and comments. So you probably feel like my experience is genuine. Maybe a bit exaggerated because we all sell ourselves a bit online, on LinkedIn. But reality, having interacted with me, you feel like there's a genuine experience that's coming through. So there's trust that comes from that too. You know you're learning something from me because, in fact, I'm teaching you something right now. And in our previous conversation, you got excited about that so much that you wanted to make a video today about me talking about these things with other people, right? So other people can see who's this Denis Campeau guy, who's this unicorn that you're trying to talk to. And vulnerability is absolutely natural. If you're not vulnerable, then our conversation is not authentic. I know right now that there's about 1,000 people that's going to be looking at this video. Part of me is terrified that I'm going to get judged, but part of me knows how important it is what I'm doing today, to the point that I could be in tears if I let myself go, because I know there's going to be one person out of 1,000 that I'm going to hit them right in the heart, and they're going to realize that they've never been listening for most of their lives, and they still call themselves a great HR professional or a great manager or a great leader. But after today, they're going to wake up and say, wow, I got lots to learn. And what would happen if they actually learned how to listen more? So I can feel, even with my heart's racing a little bit right now, I can feel that your heart is racing a little bit, because this is a very bizarre rate. See, what I'm telling you is what I'm feeling is real. Even through a Zoom call, my heart, my physiological body is reacting to your physiological body. Your body posture is affecting my body posture. The way my arms are positioned right now are exactly in the same way that your arms are positioned. So I'm guessing your arms are a little bit crossed right now, aren't they?
Just like that.
Yeah. But do you know why you're doing that? because
No.
you're a little bit defensive. Your arms are still closed a little bit, right? It's like you're holding your heart in your hands. Isn't it interesting?
Yes, it's kind
So body language. But why do I know that? Because my body is doing exactly the same thing, yet I'm miles away from you.
Mhm. Wow.
So that gives you an idea of what. Now I just gave you a little bit of a taste of what level 4 listening feels like. If I go to level 5, I'm going to listen to more about how your body's moving. Actually, it's more around your spine, around level 5. Level 6 is your body naturally wants to make gestures. That's why when I run the video, I on purpose let my hands move because it makes more entertaining to look. But also my hands are moving in a certain flow. They move in a very specific type of pattern. So when I'm talking to somebody who's very genuine, their body starts naturally, almost like dancing. If you've seen people in India dance with their bodies are communicating immensely. But in North America, we hold back our bodies a lot, and it creates a lot of stress. And because people aren't listening to what our body is trying to say physiologically, we lose that communication. And there's a huge amount of information. And level 7, well, I won't talk about it today because it'll freak you out a little bit. But level 7, you don't need to talk, and I'll still understand. And actually, men do a lot of talking without talking. And women tend to communicate more easily verbally. I don't know why. Not all women, but if I were to make a slight generalization, if I permit myself to do that, men tend to do a lot of little nods and moves of their heads. Women tend to communicate a lot more, and actually most of their body moves more than men. So when I coach men, it's more challenging because they tend to be more rigid and want to compete with me on the phone. Women tend to be a bit more relaxed working with a male coach. I don't know why. There's just a certain dynamic that happens. Anyway, so now you got a taste of what listening feels like. So my question to you now is, how did I make you feel for the last 5 minutes?
I don't feel that there is an audience listening to us right now. I feel secure. I feel that there is nothing wrong with those feelings because every single person who is looking at it would feel the same. I don't feel odd. I don't feel that I'm bad or good, or I'm not judgmental towards myself whatsoever. I'm just, I'm embracing, even when you said that I was a little bit defensive, I embrace that fact because it would be strange not to be a little bit defensive in this stressful situation. I mean, I would work on relaxing more in the future, or I would be more mindful, but it is normal. You made me feel comfortable and that everything that I'm experiencing is normal. I was shocked by the fact that you recognized that my heart was racing, which it was. I was shocked by the fact that you recognized the position of my hands. And I feel how much of communication we are losing by having virtual meetings rather than in-person meetings.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I had one of my recent clients, one of the clients was actually always putting his face near the camera like this. And he was talking like this all the time. So can you imagine having an executive talking to the group like this all the time? Like what it does to the people trying to interpret his body language.
It's like you're trying to see what's on my desk.
Correct. It's intimidating. It's actually in your face. It's too close, right? So we need to be about this distance. And in fact, your camera is better placed than mine because of my circumstance, because of where I am today, because I have other members of my family in the house. Anyway, so here's my next question for you is, what's your level of trust in me now as a result of our little 5-minute exercise? Do you trust me more or you trust me less?
I trust you more.
How much more? So on a scale of 0 to 10 would be like 10% more, 20%, 30%, 100%?
Well, it's hard to say. I can only express it in a way that I trust you that you won't harm me. Okay. And I trust, I can, it's hard for me to come up with a number.
But just try. Give a number, try. 10% more, 20%, 50%?
50% more. And again, I'm not, maybe 100% more. I just don't feel danger coming from you. So,
so imagine, now I want to bring this back to change management, back to our topic of the day. That's why people have tuned in today, right? What would happen if every manager in your organization learned how to do a very simple dialogue with their staff once every 2 weeks in their one-on-one? What would happen to your organization's efficiency or ability to retain your staff if they felt safer once, at least every 2 weeks, for 30 minutes? What would happen to your organization's ability to communicate more clearly to the needs of their employees if they felt like they were heard at least once every 2 weeks? What would happen to your training program if you actually knew what people needed in relation to the big change you're making in the organization? And what would happen if all the employees trusted their managers a little bit more? And how would that make them trust their executives more in where they're taking the organization? And all that just because somebody took 5 minutes to listen to someone. And yet every day we have tons of time to go for lunch and chit chats and meetings before the meeting and meetings after the meetings and meeting in between the meetings and all these meaningless times that are spent when we could actually just take 5 minutes and connect with someone. Because what you're experiencing with me is called a connection. And without that connection, you will not get an authentic interaction. And if you don't get an authentic interaction, you will never get the right communication through to your staff and to your clients. You will never get the proper training programs done just in time. And you certainly won't have coaching happening, because how could somebody be a great coach if they can't listen to someone? How can you be asking the right question if you don't know what they actually just said? And how can you be spending so much time claiming you're listening to someone else when you're actually stuck in your head trying to plan what the next question is going to be, or the thing you really want them to do that you're trying to plant into their head, almost like sabotage or like tampering in their minds, instead of just listening where they're at and meeting them where they're at and helping them that other place that you all want to be and finding alignment in your objectives. But all that has to happen with basic listening. And too often we spend tons of time practicing how do we communicate and what are the communication vehicles. And it's all great, it's important, but you can't communicate outward until you actually had that inward listening exercise, either with the client or with the employees or with middle managers. Without this, you can't communicate, because when you communicate, you want to be communicating in the language that they can understand. Otherwise, you'll be communicating in a language that they don't, and you'll sound like an alien to them, and they'll disconnect. They'll be frightened. And when people are frightened, they resist. And in the world of change management, resist is questions, the right answers to the questions that you're learning to ask, but you don't feel safe enough to ask. For example, if an executive says, "We just lost a big client," right? We just lost a big client. Everybody instinctively will think, "I lost my job. I better go find another job," right?
Exactly.
If you don't respond to that feeling that of the racing heart of everybody in the room who just heard that we lost a big contract, because really what they want to know is, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Look, I get shivers just saying it right now. I literally have shivers on my body saying this.
Me too.
What's happening is you connected with me. See this shiver you're feeling? That's a human connection.
I feel coldness like around my body, like fear creeping in.
There you go. Right. So what's happening right now is you and I have a connection, even over Zoom. It doesn't matter distance and time. This is the cool part. So if an executive says something like that to his entire organization, but sends it authentically, listen, we lost a big client. We lost a client, not I, not you. It wasn't anybody's fault. We learned something, and here's what we learned. We need to do this, we need to do that, we need to improve. We're going to be better. Next, not only would we get this client, we're going to get more clients. And here's what you all need to do. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to learn from this. And that's important, because there's no such thing as failure. There's only learning and winning. Every failure is something to learn, but unless you go through the learning and be authentic about what did we learn about our strengths, about our weaknesses, then people will have more energy like you've ever seen before. Even in the organization, worst possible state, generate the most energy and turn around way faster than anybody else, because an executive dared to be authentic. Even dared to tell people, listen, 10% of you are going to be losing your jobs, but I don't want more than 10%. So we're going to work hard to keep that number down so we can save more jobs. We're going to row harder in this boat. We're going to fight stronger. We're going to be better because of this. And we're going to hire people back, because that's how good we're going to turn this boat around. We're going to go and pick them back up in the water, even the ones we dropped off. I've heard I've seen leaders do this, and people would come out with shivers and feel like they had air under their wings because it was authentic. It wasn't pretending that everything's going to be fine. Sometimes you need to do that. You can't tell everybody as an executive what's really going on, but you need to give them enough that they feel like they can do something about it. Otherwise, they feel vulnerable and they feel like insecure. What are you asking me to do? Why are you telling me this information? So communications, it's important to relate to their reality, to meet them where they're at. Some organizations, you can be completely authentic with them because it's a small team, it's less than 100 staff. Everybody knows what's going on anyway. But when you get into the larger organizations, 500, thousands of people, what you say, people will hang on to little words of what you say and will completely shift direction based on a few words. So it's really important to listen to where they're at in their processing of their reality so that you can communicate according to that language, according to that change that you're trying to do together. Anyway, I'm looking at time. I know that we're probably getting close to an hour. And I can see your eyes because I'm paying attention to where your eyes are moving as we're talking.
Well, there was also some connection problem with internet, and I was trying to see if I need to move something around to bring you back. Denis, what you described and what I felt, I find that leaders often think of this particular type of connection as waste of time. They think that they need to do real job. They need to be on the phone. They need to do something in order to justify their title, their position, in order for others to see that they are actually doing stuff so that others can work harder. But what you described saves company a lot of money and brings company a lot of business long-term if you just had a good quality connection with your employees. And I hope that this conversation will help leaders not to feel guilty for making those connections, not to feel guilty of wasting time, because the role of a leader is, I think we both agree on that, is not about competing with your employees on who can do the job better or faster. It's about the connection, and this is not a waste of time talking to your team.
I'll give you an example. I worked for 15 years to build the internet. And one of our dreams was that someday, if something happens on the planet, that we could all stay connected. And isn't it interesting? We're using that. I was one of at one point, a third of the traffic on the internet flowing through our equipment. That's amazing. So today, as a father, I can, you know what? Today you can Zoom and you can connect with us because Dad and a whole bunch of other people worked so that this could happen. Otherwise, our economy would be collapsed even further. So, but why did we do that? We did that because we knew that people, what they crave the most is the connection. Every business that fights is for a connection. Every restaurant that is shuttered right now is fighting to bring people back in because they know the feeling of having a family in the room. One of my clients, her restaurant burnt down during the pandemic. It was a freak accident. The business was actually doing better than usual because people believed in the family feeling they were getting from it. Every business is trying to connect people, whether it be a charity, a non-for-profit, a big financial system. Talk with anybody. Every single business at the end, Teslas, new electric vehicles, going to another planet. It's all about connecting the human race together and bringing the human race to another place, a better future, some other planet if we have to, you know? But we're all fighting for the same thing. So when an executive, people forget that people are there because they're with other people. That's what a company is. A company literally means 150 soldiers in the military. People forget where that word actually comes from. So people fight for that connection. People stay in a company because they have a connection. People leave from the company because they lost a connection or they formed a better one somewhere else. But we should never prevent people from moving around. That's another thing executives have to learn. If somebody wants to leave your company, you should be happy. Because if they're not happy where you are, you want them to be happy somewhere else. Isn't that the whole point? But if they leave, and if you manage that change, even losing people as the worst possible change, losing a great expert, but if you do it well, you won't lose them. You will gain the door to a whole other universe. That's why, Tatiana, one thing I told you, and I think it struck you the other day, every person I meet is like a door. It's like a handle. So if executives could realize that every time they talk with staff, every time they talk with a partner, another leader, even the person who's actually sweeping the floors in their building, all of them will bring them everything they need in this universe, but they just have to believe in that possibility, and they might be surprised. In one of my recent jobs, every morning I would come into the building and I would say hi to the person who was actually cleaning the windows in our building. He was cleaning the windows and he was cleaning the handles on every door. This was before the pandemic, and nobody would even give him the light of day. Nobody even knew his name. So I actually, for 6 months, befriended this person, saying thank you every day for cleaning the windows and doors. Thank you for keeping the elevators safe. And then when the pandemic happened, he went from the person that nobody cared about to the most important person in our building because he was keeping the place clean. Wow. So isn't it interesting that overnight, this person that I decided to keep one connection with became the person who could bring me all the other people that keep our place safe. But if we wouldn't have maintained that relationship, we would have lost him. And he's the person who's the most diligent of them all. So I think what happens is sometimes as executives, as managers, we get caught up in the day-to-day of the job, and that's okay. We have to get the job done. Clients are waiting. We have deadlines. We have service level agreements. We have contracts. I get it. It's all important. That has to happen. And what needs to happen is the soft side of the business, the people side. If you lose your people in your organization, it's way harder to replace them. And if you lose the wrong person, the wrong influencer in your network, they will rip a part of your organization out that you will never even be able to rebuild. And that's often, too often, because the employee wasn't feeling seen and didn't feel heard for the potential that they wanted, fully willing to offer to the organization, that was not receptive and not listening for that opportunity. Every single time that I've seen people move is because they don't feel seen and they don't feel heard. Every time a recruiter doesn't find the right client is because the client didn't feel seen, doesn't feel heard. Every recruiter that I will actively pursue to continue, because I'm going to tell them, you're part of my very circle of trust because of how you feel. 5 minutes I can treat. I'm going to test it for another 30 minutes and then maybe an hour. And then I will open up my entire network that I've been building for over 30, 40 years for your business to grow because you helped me, because I'm your universe and you're a door to mine. So through every single human connection we have, we find everything we need and we don't give it a chance. I know every practice I find through you. I'd be willing to bet on that. But it depends on the quality of our relationship, because you already have a huge network. I don't need to go one really good connection, and I have it with you. I could almost say, like, why bother with all the other ones? But it's just bonus. It's real. I sincerely feel that. I believe it, but I've seen it in action. Right?
That's why I'm doing what I do, and that's why you made that amazing change in your personal life. Every day, if we can do something to make others' lives make sense and help other people feel fulfilled, or at least that they're heard and they're not alone in their struggle, that's a big mission to accomplish. And I think this is what we have done today. I'm very grateful for your time, Denis. I know that we both have families running behind those closed doors, and it's the holiday season, and I wish you success. I know that you are a successful person. I hope that your definition of success and you're staying true to yourself, and people who you meet will give you that opportunity to spread your wings even wider.
So, great. Thank you very much, Tatiana. It's a great opportunity. And for everybody who's listening in, if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn through your connection, I'm more than happy to follow through.
I recommend. I know that my clients, some of them are interested in bringing in either change management coach or emotional intelligence or leadership coach. If you are an executive who wants to have a one-on-one session with Denis, all the information is available on LinkedIn, and we will I will connect you, no problem at all. So I hope
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.